Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, we're going to be looking at Ansible, one of the DevOps tools that you can use to support multiple servers right after this. Yeah, so Ansible is really considered part of the DevOps suite of tools that you can use. It's one of many. It performs automation, configuration management, a whole bunch of things, and we'll get into that. But first of all, let's look at what is Ansible. Ansible is an open source tool, and it's part of Red Hat today. It's included with a lot of different distributions, from Fedora all the way out to Scientific Linux. There is a proprietary version, however, called Ansible Tower, and that sells for a license, and Red Hat sells that. But there's a free version that's licensed under the GPL v3 Plus, and that's the one we're going to be looking at today. It's totally free, totally open source. The source code is published out in GitHub, so you can look at that. Ansible automates almost everything, from configuration of your systems to performing orchestration, setting up packages for the first time, doing simple automation like backups or just updating scripts or firing off scripts on those systems that you want to have done. Perform system updates so that if you want to update packages across all your systems, you can do that. Basically, whatever you can think of. There are so many different modules, and we'll talk about those. There's so many modules that you can plug in or plugins that you can use to extend Ansible into almost any environment, whether that be AWS or Azure, whether it's your home servers, whether it's anything. So it's similar to other tools like CF Engine, Chef, Jenkins, Puppet, Salt. Although Jenkins has some other tools in it that allow for compiling software and then packaging it and shipping it off in order to become a test system. So there's some things in Jenkins, Ansible will do, but it's really not meant for code development, the development cycle. It'll do some, but it's not quite as sophisticated as Jenkins is. So there are some other tools that you can use like Nagios and Zabbix. Those are pretty specialized though, and so I'm not going to get into those today. Ansible was developed by Michael DeHaan in February of 2012, and he developed it in order to automate repetitive tasks across many servers. And if you've got a lot of servers, whether it's in your home network or your office or your business, that can take quite a bit of time doing this task and then going to that server and doing the same task, and maybe you entered something wrong or you forgot a file. It's just all kinds of errors you can do. But it allows you to do that task across Linux. Now, today, Ansible is available for Windows, Mac OS, the BSD platforms. They all work, and so that it is available. Ansible was acquired by Red Hat in 2015. But where the heck did they come up with this? Ansible, what does that mean? What is that thing? So it was first used by Ursula K. Le Guin in her book 1966 called Rocannon's World. And in there, Ansible described a fictitious instantaneous communication system. So that's where Ansible got its name from. Currently, we're on version 2.9.4, and that's the most current of this video. Today, I'm going to be looking at an older version because I want to run this on a Raspberry Pi. And if you want the latest versions and you're on something like Ubuntu or Debian, and those packages are going to be backdated, there are instructions in the installer on how to use the PPAs to pick up the latest versions of the packages. So you can do that. Raspberry Pi, unfortunately, is not in the PPA, at least as of the last time I checked. So the architecture of Ansible is really core down here. This is really the central part of Ansible, and that is the actual server part of it itself, and that is what they refer to as the automation engine. It consists of 4 parts, and we'll talk about those: inventory, APIs, modules, and plugins. And then that can take input either from a user or a playbook. So I can have some command lines I can run in order to start off stuff, or I can use a playbook to automate all these different things in order to affect all of these different things. So yes, it can make changes to hosts, it can make changes to network gear. These two parts up here are really more applicable to Tower. This would be your configuration management databases, which would be like your warehouse for your configuration management. And then this would be our cloud management pieces that you would need. Now, you can move this Ansible engine up into Azure or up into AWS or any other cloud provider for that matter in order to make changes to your servers, whether those be in a public cloud or even in a private cloud. Ansible has the ability to do that. I'm not sure that I personally would want a cloud managing a private system, but hey, people have done dumber things. Inventory, this is a configuration file where you define the hosts. And you can define groups of hosts. So you could have a set of hosts that say are your web servers, so that you're doing tasks for those that are different than the rest. You might have a load balancer defined. You might have a database group defined. And of course, you would then have different packages that you would install on those. The APIs are used to move commands and data and other structures through the network. I'm not going to talk about that too much today. Modules, on the other hand, I am. So modules, those execute on the Ansible engine. And they translate to commands that are going to run on your remote server. So it's basically offering you a level of abstraction. So let's say that I were to say, let's say I had a module that just did a generic update package. Well, in the module, it would know based on the inventory of the systems, and it collects information from those systems to determine what they are. But in there, it might say, oh, this is Red Hat, I need to run a DNF command. Or, oh, this is Debian, I need to run an APT command. So it knows to do that. Plugins also extend Ansible. So those are used to, okay, I want to manage a VMware host. There are plugins that do that, and there are modules that do that as well. So if something new comes along, you can install a plugin to support that kind of functionality. And some of them are included, and some you have to, like I said, optional. So the networking, Ansible can perform operations on different networks, and those could be RDMA networks. The hosts are the hosts themselves that Ansible is actually executing commands on. Playbooks are written in YAML, yet another markup language, and that describes the tasks that are to be performed on each host. So it's kind of like I want to group up a whole bunch of stuff that I want to do on that host. So while I'm over there, I want to update the packages, my cache, my APT cache. Maybe I want to change some configuration files around, and then maybe at the end, make sure that everything is up to date by doing an upgrade packages. And it just allows you to do a whole bunch of things at once to that server. So it's kind of like a list. CMDB and cloud we talked about already, so I'm not going to spend any more time on that. Why would you use Ansible? Why is this better than anything else? So Ansible is agentless. Now there are some of the other tools that do require you to install an agent on each of the remote hosts. Ansible, you do not. The only thing that's required on the remote host is an SSH server. So depending upon your IT's policy, that may or may not be possible. And in which case, you'd probably have to use some other mechanism to get access to those hosts. So, but yeah, an SSH server is required on the remote host. It is, and also Python. So it is, Ansible is written in Python, and it will, the way it executes is it will run Python on those remote hosts in order to pass the commands to fire off the applications on your system that it needs in order to perform whatever task you've told it to do. It has been updated to Python 3. It was originally written in Python 2, but today the versions are all Python 3 based. It's fairly easy to learn and get started with, and I'll show you some simple examples today. I'm not going to get into roles. I just think that's way too complicated for right now. But I will direct you, as I always do when you get into these more advanced features, where you can go to get more information about doing roles and more complex playbooks. I might show you a couple of examples of those today, just to give you a flavor for what is possible, and then leave that as an exercise for you to go investigate. I might come back and do a more advanced video on this later. It depends on you guys if you're interested in this. And this is something that interests you, I'd be happy to go back and do that for you and show you how to do this. It's idempotent, which means basically that if I've already done a task, like say I'm going to install 5 packages, and I accidentally run the command again, or I run it again and against the same block of hosts. Sometimes now you know that if you install a package again and you force it, it could overwrite your config. So you don't want that. So Ansible knows that. It knows the packages have been installed, and it'll just skip it. It'll just skip over those steps. If there are new packages, however, it will go ahead and install those, but it'll skip the rest of them. So that's important that Ansible has that ability. The other nice thing about Ansible is it can perform the task on multiple hosts at the same time. And you can control that. You can control how many hosts you want Ansible to be able to work with. So I guess the thing that we should do here is actually go kick the tires on it a little bit. So let's go do that. Hopefully this will let me log in. It didn't the last time. There's a blocker on this, and I think my system is not in it, but we'll see in a minute if it lets me in. It may just sit here and stare at me. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're in. I guess it said I'm okay. So the first thing that you would want to do, obviously you can see I'm running this on a Raspberry Pi. And the first thing that you would want to do is I'm just going to do a more. I think it's probably good enough for this. And you can see that there's a number of things here. There's the Ansible, it's 277, which I told you. It's already installed, as you can see. And there's also Doc, there's also Lint. There's the Tower client is open source, but unfortunately, I am not going to cover that today. And then there's the doc file for that. So, and again, if you want the latest version and your systems are in the PPA, you can install the 294. But for today, we're just going to do that one. So we would do this command. It's going to tell it it's already installed, but it would go ahead. There's a list of dependencies that takes quite a while. It installs some hooks for a web server, and it also installs Python, and installs some Python modules that it needs, as well as all of the Ansible tools that it needs as well. Once you've done that, I would suggest the first thing to do is just run a version command. Just make sure that it's working okay. If this comes back and tells you the version number is whatever, 277 or 294, and it gives you where your config file is and all this stuff, you're good. You're good to go. So you know that it's going to be using Python 3 because it tells you it's using Python 3.73 down there. So we're all good. Next step would be, if you haven't done that, you'll need to do a keygen on your host in order to get a set of keys that you can use for the next step. I'm not going to run that because that would invalidate my system to a number of other things. So at this point, you would do a copy ID to each of the hosts, and that is to allow it to do passwordless entry. Now you can go ahead and give the password to Ansible if you put a -K on the command line. and then it will collect the password for the SSH session from you. But yeah, it's probably going to tell me this is already done. It's going to come back, and then I can test whether or not I can get in or not without a password. I do it with keys. It's just, to me, it's more secure than passing a password. Your preference. It makes no difference to me. Once you've got that all done, you're ready. You're almost ready to go. So the next step is you'll want to do this as sudo, is go ahead and create a host file, and that's created. This is your inventory. And that is created in Etsy Ansible /host. Now it can be in a different directory, but you have to pass it where you have to pass the command variables to tell Ansible where to go find the host file. But by default, this is where it is. The first one here, this bracketed deb, is a group. So all the hosts under here are part of group deb. So instead of me having to provide all this long list of hosts on the command line, I can just say deb, and it'll pick up all those hosts. I have a different group called deb2. I have a whole bunch of them. I'm not going to go through them, but I'm going to go down here to the end. This one is used for provisioning new systems, and that's the one we're going to be playing around with today. So yeah, you can group it according to function. So if you have web servers, you can say, okay, this group is just web servers, or this group is just databases. This group is for Docker or Kubernetes, whatever. So yeah, so once you're done with that, I'm not going to write that. I've already done that. So once you're done with that, there's two ways you can run that command. I can do this. I can run a command. So I run Ansible. I'm going to execute command Ansible, and I'm going to give it the host name. Now, if I did, I guess I should probably do this first. I probably should show you the command first. Yes. So you have Ansible, you have a host pattern, which could be the host name, or it can be the IP address, or it could be the group name. And then what options you want to pass. And over here, you'll see there's the module arguments. There's where you pick up your inventory file if it's in a different location, and on and on and on. Okay, I'm not going to worry about all that right now. I'll explain to you what I'm going to do as we go. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to use new. I'm going to ask for a module called ping. Now, if I wanted to run this as a different user other than the one I'm logged in, I would specify a -u. I don't have to. I'll go ahead and leave it because it then knows that, hey, explicitly to use pi as the command to execute. So now it's running this pong command. So it's logged in as SSH. It's fired off the Ansible interpreter on the other end, and then it passed over the command and executed ping on that side, and it came back. Done. So yeah, it's a real simple module to make sure that all your systems are up. Handy. There's some other ones you can use too. Let's do a shell. And in this case, I have to give it a -a. I can go back up here. I can look at the -a. Module arguments is all it says. And so I'm telling it to run module shell, and then I'm passing arguments to the module. So, and the arguments I'm going to pass is I'm going to do a df command. And this time I'm going to leave the -u off. So it's explicitly pi that's going to run this out. It'll go out, it's going to fire off the decaf, and it's going to come back. Now I've got a slow LDAP server today, so I'm not sure what's going on with it, but it's a little funky. So it came back with the df -kh, and it's showing me these are all the mount points on the system. I could run some other things too. Yellow, if it comes back in green, it means there's no change. If it comes back in yellow, that means that it found a difference. And yeah, okay, yeah, I would probably imagine it doesn't have anything caching for this. This time I'm going to run 3 parts to the command, ls -l, and then I'm going to just do the root directory. on that particular system, and then it comes back with the list of files and directories in root. So yeah, you can run commands that way. If you're up, if you're doing stuff like that, you can do it. Now, just remember that there is no command input. So whatever, if you want to pass data to this, like you want to be able to, if your particular application on the other end is prompting for keyboard input, yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. You have to pass everything to it at once, because it's sort of like, I'm going to take this whole command, I'm going to execute it, and then come back. So just be aware of that. Let's see. Playbooks. We talked about those being a kind of a list of things that you want to do. Let's look at a simple one first. Well, nothing's really simple. So to execute a playbook, what you do is you use the Ansible-playbook command. And in this case, all I'm doing is I'm specifying the name of the playbook I want to execute. And then the user -k says, like I said, you can pass the SSH password with the execution. So that's what that's asking for. And then this one is saying, I also need to know the sudo password if it's different. So if I want to become root, how do I become root? And of course, this command, because it's updating packages, is going to have to run as root on the remote system. So let's go look at the actual playbook YAML file. This has a number of components. The first two are comments. The # is a comment. YAML has some pretty harsh spacing requirements. So if you want to indent something, you have to be 2 spaces in to do that. And if you indent again, 2 spaces from the previous. So if you don't do that, it will give you an error message that your YAML is incorrectly formatted. This one is saying to pick up out of the host inventory a group called new. So as you saw in my inventory, I have a group called new that includes Node 5 as the only host in it. And then it says, I need to become root. That's where that comes from. So this part of it is going to say, oh, yeah, you did ask to become, you want the password as well, so this is going to run as root. And then we have a pre-task, which is, there's always 3 things that are in a playbook: a pre-task, a role, and a post-task. So I'll have a pre-task, which is one task or a set of tasks that I want to be able to run before I do anything else. So in this case, I'm asking for it to update the APT cache. So that'd be equivalent to do an APT update. If that update has been done within 3,600 seconds, don't do it again. And then there's a role, which is blank in my case, because I don't have anything else for it to do other than to close out. And I'm going to do an upgrade distribution. So that's all I'm going to do here. So let's go ahead and run this. I'll run my shell command. First thing it should ask me for is the SSH password. And if my sudo password was different, I would type it there. Otherwise, I could hit enter if it's the same as the SSH, which in this case it is. I could bypass that SSH. I just added that -k in here to show you that you could pass an SSH password with the start of the command. So the first thing it does is it does a gathering facts phase where it goes in and it queries the system for what's the OS, what kind of hardware is this, it gains some information about the system, and then the next thing it's going to do is actually run the pretest or the pre-task. And once it's completed the pre-task, it's going to execute roles. It doesn't have any, so then it falls into the post-task. Now, in this case, it found an update for the APT cache, but it didn't have any packages to update. So it's telling me a yellow is changed. So that tells me I had an update to my APT cache, but none of the packages I have installed are affected, so it bypassed those. And it's summarizing that, yep, there was a change. There was 3 things it did. It did the gathering, it did the pre-task, it skipped over the roles, and it did the post-task. Changed is 1, which is right here, cache. Unreachable, it was fine. There's no failures. So that's basically it. Now, next time, maybe I'll get into roles. Those are more advanced. I don't think that would really help you today, but I could show you. Well, if I get into roles, then we'll be here for a lot longer. So I don't think I really want to do that today. So let's cut back over here. And well, not there. Let me just let me take you to their site. Let me do that first. So this is the user guide, and you can find that on docs.ansible.com. And they have a nice user guide. There's a quick start guide on how to get started. Let me blow this up just a little bit. It might help you see this a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, we have control nodes, the manage nodes, the inventory. This is modules. I just want to give you a kind of an idea of some of the things that it has in here. Now, this is the list of all the modules. And it's broken down by, yeah, if I bring this one up, we'll be here for a while because it's huge. And you can look at the ones that are specific to the types of things that maybe you're interested in doing. So let's say that, let's look at utilities. So over here you have, these would be used within the role in order to make decisions about what's to happen next. So, and then you could import. So based on what you find, you can import different pieces into what you're running. That's more advanced. Don't want to get into that. Let's look at system modules. And here we have cron, dfcon, groups, host name. I can change any of this stuff. IP tables. I can change user, UFW, time zones. Any of this stuff can be modified within this. So yeah, next time I come back, yeah, you can even mount stuff. Next time when I come back to this, we'll go a little deeper into it. But I just want to show you where kind of things are. Now, to get started, there is this quick start guide, which goes through, here's some information about getting started with Ansible, and then here's what you need to know as a sysadmin. So, and there's a nice quick start video that'll get you going with it, and it describes pretty much what I talked about in this, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit better, but yeah. So let me just go back over here and talk about. So we talked a little bit today about how to install Ansible, what you need to do to set up your inventory, how to run some ad hoc commands. We did the ping, and we did the df and an ls. I showed you a little bit about modules in that. I showed you the ping module, and I showed you the shell module. I showed you the playbook in a very simple form. I did not show you roles today. And I showed you how to run those playbooks. I use Ansible every day to manage my systems here. I have a lot of them. And so, yeah, they take some time to do. So I'm going to plan on probably doing some more advanced stuff. But again, that depends on you guys, if that's something that interests you. So with that, let me go back. Yeah, it depends on what you guys want. Let me know in the comments below if this is something more that you would like to learn more about, or maybe even one of the other tools. Now, I have not used Puppet in a long time. I'll tell you that up front. Rails is weird to me. so I just prefer to stay with Ansible. That's just a personal thing. Hope you enjoyed this video today. Please like and subscribe, and hope to see you all again real soon. And bye for now.